bag. Oh,
Hold on.
my mic's All right, Morena team, we're going to get started, so if you could take your seats, that would be great. Or I can use this bell.
We need the gavel as well. We thought there might be overkill.
I'll start playing Taylor Swift through the microphone next. That's the next, the next weapon I have.
All right, here we go.
Oh,
We have happiness. Fine.
great. Okay. All right, Morena everyone. Coop, Martin, we're going to start. Where are you guys going? Oh my gosh. People are just like, I don't know, crawling around today.
The problem is that the meat is crap. That's the problem. The meat is crap. Oh, that's why he was like, what's the issue? Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It was Nigel, wasn't it?
It's money. Sean's running.
Come on everyone, to the table.
Sorry.
Come on. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know. I'm like, hello, is anybody home?
This is the 18 bell. That's what I saw.
Okay, I don't know if it's yeah, this is working. I just feel like it's not getting through to people. Taringa whakarongo. All right.
This one's pretty good.
Oh yeah, true. No, we're good. All right, welcome everyone to our Strategy Operations and Finance meeting of the 16th of May to councillors, community board members, mana whenua partners and staff in the room. Thanks everyone for being relatively prompt this morning. We'll pass over to Kim Tahiwi for our council blessing.
Kia ora tātou. Ia mātou e whiriwhiri ana I ngā take kai mua I a mātou aroaro. E pono ana mātou ka kaha tonu ki te whakapau mahara, ua pai mō ngā hāpuri e mahi nei mātou, me kaha hoki mātou katoa kia whaihua kia tōtika tō mātou mahi, a mā te maia te tiro whakamoa me te hihiri, ka taia te arahi I roto I te kotahitanga me te aroha.
Kia ora, thank you, Kim. Just to note, we will be trying to take a break at 11 o'clock for tea, coffee and kind of a pit stop, so just to keep that in mind. And also to note that an email was sent out asking for specifically quite detailed questions to be sent through in advance, and I did have note of one of those which has been followed up already. So we will be looking to just kind of keep our questions nice and succinct and move through the meeting efficiently if we can. Apologies, we have Councillor Jocelyn Pravanov with a leave of absence, and we've got Shelley Warwick on Zoom. Do we need to move and second those if it's just a leave of absence on Zoom? No, just to note it. Okay, cool. Item number 4, declarations of interest relating to items on the agenda. Haven't been made aware of any. Item 5, public speaking time for items relating to the agenda. There's no one speaking with us this morning. Deputations, none. Members' business, leave of absences. Again, you can make the Mayor's Office aware of those if you have a leave that you would like to take. Matters of an urgent nature, also none. Updates, item number 8, there are none. And so that takes us to item number 9, reports. 9.1, performance report for the period ending 31 March 2024. So would like to welcome up Mark and I think Cheryl to the table. Yeah, awesome. Cool, so we'll pass over to Mark and Cheryl to, getting another mic, cool. To briefly introduce the report and note any comments or things to highlight, and then we'll open up for questions. Thank you, and this paper feels like it's been a little bit of a long time coming, so good to get to it.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Morena, everybody. Look, we will largely take the report as read. It does cover the 9-month period. Normally we do a 6-month report, but as the report said, just due to resource constraints and developing the long-term plan with you, we weren't able to do that. However, what's before you is a 9-month performance report. There is a new addition to the report. It's the top 10 priorities has been included. So this performance report provides you with an overview of how we're performing against our level of service performance measures that we report on at this stage. There are 38 performance measures that are only measured annually, which means we do that at year end, so that forms part of the annual report. But across the board, we're seeing an improvement on our performance compared to last year. We're tracking really well in our top 10 priorities. We're doing well in our levels of service measure, and importantly, the resident opinion survey is showing an improvement as well. So pleasing results. It does have a full year forecast. We are almost at the back end of May, which is period 11, so we are actually approaching the end of the financial year. So the forecasts are best estimate at this stage, and the year-to-date underspend does reflect mainly timing differences, but the full year forecast, we do take ownership of Old State Highway 1, so that's the section from Mackay's Crossing to Peka Peka. That gets reflected as a vested asset. Unfortunately, it's valued at fair value. It doesn't actually reflect cash. So we don't have a $97 million cash surplus. It's just how we account for it. So when it transfers, we reflect it as revenue under accounting standards. Some will argue it's a liability. So it's an asset, but of course we have the ongoing obligation to maintain that. So while we're over budget with that, is not only are we receiving the Old State Highway 1 from Mackay's crossing to Peka Peka, but we're also receiving local roads from Peka Peka to Otaki, which is why we're higher than budget. So with that said, happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the table? And yeah, just probably briefly before that, acknowledging the rather positive, more positive picture that this paints from the last performance report too, in terms of that uptick and a whole bunch of things. So yeah, Councillor Coe.
Just one little nitpicky thing here, then I've got another question. But on page 23, under town centres, you've got, in the current market, we are finding our early cost estimates are lower than tender prices. Is that, or should it be higher?
No.
Am I reading it wrong?
Sorry, just for clarity, you want the page number on the page number on the
Oh, page 23 of the report.
No, I think what we're saying is that, so in terms of the actual tender prices are still coming. As we've seen a 30% increase on our CapEx program, our tender prices are still coming in higher than our early cost estimates.
That's not what it says. It says we are finding our early cost estimates are lower than tender prices.
So our
I see. Oh,
our estimates,
right.
our budgets
I
are
see,
lower
it's
than
right,
actual.
Okay. I'm reading it the wrong way around. Yep. That's confusing English. May I suggest that we
Simplify the language.
that we take out that ambiguity, because it implies that the
Noted.
costs are
Yep.
low. Yeah. Okay, cool. And then my other question is, I may have raised this when we had another performance report one time, but in terms of the areas where there's room for improvement, shall we say, how do we pick up on that? Because this is just reporting, but then reports are only good if you actually take some action as a result. Otherwise, you're wasting your time doing the report. So, what are the actions that we would take as a result of seeing this information, and how is that captured? Does it belong in this report, or is that a separate process?
So through you, Madam Chair. So sort of any corrective actions that we need to take are obviously picked up, more helpful when we do 6 monthly reporting. We've only done a 9-month report. How we try and convey areas of focus is we always have a part in the resident opinion survey. Obviously those are opinions and we pick up the trends. So we always have a piece in that which shows what our focus areas will be to the remaining of the year. I think that's in, we've included that in the resident opinion survey for Q1, Q2. In terms of the performance measures that are due and are not being met, what we're doing is, in terms of our commentary, we explain why we haven't met, and if there's a corrective measure, we do take that. We don't have a process where we do a follow-up report that identifies areas for improvement, but generally speaking, with each activity, the commentary is intended to provide an account of what we've done, what we're seeing, and if there's any improvement measures, we do that. But throughout the report as well, we also have a challenges section, which is where we pick up what our challenges are and how we're trying to address those. And I think Sean wants to add a bit as well.
Okay.
Just very briefly, but we also do at the end of the year look to see where streetlights and footpaths are a good example where historically we were scoring quite low in those areas. We've increased those budgets in terms of renewals and maintenance in the last LTP to look to try and move us up higher in terms of responsiveness. And so a physical asset or one of those areas in infrastructure where we're scoring low, we'll use that as a measure as to see whether we need to invest more to do more to lift it. And So that's certainly something we do in those areas.
Right, so it's not just a waste of time, you're actually using.
Yes, and you can see, yeah.
That's all I needed to know, yeah. Thanks.
Sorry, if I may also just acknowledge that with the upcoming tabling of our long-term plan, we've obviously undertaken some work with you already to review some of our performance measures. So I think that through that process there will be a bit more clarity in some of the areas where we might have picked up that it might not be as clear how or where we might be able to influence change. And I will pick a resident survey measure as an example. The new measures that we're going to table will be able to more directly say to you, this is why this is happening, and here are the actions we're going to take to shift that measure in the direction that we want. And so that is it's a real challenge for us at the moment with some of the resident survey measures. So we do focus on them, I think, which you've heard from Sean, but we're very aware that we need some more practical and direct things that we can be held to account for, essentially, around the impacts that we're having. So we're hopeful that those new suite of measures help in our upcoming discussions. It won't land for the annual report, unfortunately, but in our next first quarter performance, I think you'll see us being able to tell a better story about our influence on those things.
Thanks, Chris. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it quite as harshly as Comrade Coe, but I would be asking, at best these things are a snapshot of a moving target, and I just wonder, this is the thick end of a 100-page report, which is an organisation-wide response to information. I just wonder about the necessity of this at all. When we have an annual plan, at best, like I say, it's a snapshot. Public satisfaction surveys, if you take one today, because everybody's been behaving themselves, it's terrific. The Mayor Streets through Coastlands on Tuesday, and the satisfaction report reflects whatever is the current thing, right? So I'm not suggesting that, but let me know in advance.
Sorry, Nigel, do you have a question?
Yeah, well, yeah, that is my question.
I think your question's been heard. Can we?
Yeah. So the
pass it
question
on
is,
to
why
Mark?
do we do this? And just a couple of specifics in there as well. One is the $97 million asset, which is actually a liability, of course, and it is a liability because it gets us no revenue, but it does bring us a significant number of costs. So I'm not sure how that's allowed for in this. And on page 12, we had someone unflatteringly describe the new transport station as a theme park. The picture on page 12 is actually horrendously misleading. It makes it look like it's a functional thing, apart from the really manky-looking surface on the ground.
Question mark?
So bottom line with this is do we have to have this? What is the cost of producing something like this? There we go.
Through you, Madam Chair. No, we don't need to do this. There's no requirement at all to do a performance report throughout the year. You would do, legislation requires that you do an annual plan and you do an annual report. So it's been a long-standing practice that we report back on our performance so that you can keep an eye on how we're performing, both in terms of levels of service, both in terms of financially. So we feel that it's just a prudent approach to take and good practice. But there is no requirement. We have changed. We used to provide this quarterly. We moved that to half yearly as a result of COVID. and the impact that this report has on staff. But in terms of direct cost, there's no additional cost to produce this report. We have an in-house graphic designer that pulls us together. Obviously, it's staff time. It involves all our activity managers, our senior leadership team, and various big parts of finance and our comms and engagement team. So it does require effort from staff, but there's no additional cost to provide this report. And just in terms of the pictures, there's a couple of new pictures that we've put in. But it's 99 pages, and it's one of the things that the senior leadership team talked about, is the report too long. It is a one-stop shop for you. In the past, we used to do a performance measure report, an activity report, a financial report, and everyone had to go to 3 different reports. But it actually conveys how much work this council has delivered and done over the past 9 months. But the answer to your question is no, we are not required under legislation to do this.
But partially in response, and this is no disrespect to the report. It's a great report. I went through it. It's just that nobody, correct me if I'm wrong, but nobody noticed that it was 9 months and not 6. So we weren't been hanging out for the last 3 months going, my God, where's our report? And that's my point, I guess, is that if it hadn't have turned up, probably no one around this table would have even noticed. And largely because the feedback flow is pretty good already. I mean, I think councillors have a pretty good handle on what's going on. So if this is for the public, that's one thing. But in terms of information flow internally, I think we get that now.
Sorry, I thought I might just share that as one place that people can go to find out information about council and our progress that's regularly shared publicly. Where we don't share information, we get an increase in things like OIRs, with people wanting to know information about what is happening. And having a space like this to refer people to means that we can more easily talk about what is happening. And I think a lot of people have been saying to us through Vision Capity that they'd like to know more about what we're achieving. And I think the quarterly or whatever frequency of report that comes out is one mechanism to be able to share that information on a regular basis. It might be that there's other ways to do that as well, but I think this had been the main mechanism for us to share that.
Yeah. And I think also, as Mark said, because it's become sort of regular practice for the council, probably those of us who were around the table last Trainium, we did become accustomed to receiving them quarterly and now every half year. So I think maybe it's just, for those of you for whom this is your first time around the table, it's something to realise is kind of coming forward. Yeah, Mark?
Through you, Madam Chair. Look, just to add, not to diminish the question. The chair of this committee has certainly been asking us for this report several times. We have been chased for this report, and we've had understanding and support. The Chief Executive has provided updates to councillors that the 6 months report will now become a 9 months report due to resource constraints, and we've also been updating the Mayor. We are reviewing the frequency of the report. Is quarterly too much? Is half yearly too little? Central government tends to be now moving to every 4 months. But the will of the table, it's good practice. We're certainly reviewing the frequency. I think we're landing on 4 monthly. That means that you get an update before we close for Christmas. The challenge with a half yearly report is we need staff to update performance measures in January, which is when people are away and yourselves are away. So it's not a closed conversation. Our standard practice is to provide the report, but we are looking at the frequency, and that's a matter to advise the Chief Executive on. But the Chair has certainly been very supportive, but has been asking for this report to come much earlier. Thank you.
Kia ora, thanks, Mark. Councillor Cooper.
Thanks, Mark. And I quite like this report, and I think four monthly would be quite good. Maybe 6 monthly even, but 4 monthly would be good. So I quite like it. Just a question on on the Paraparaumu Transport Hub is the living roof shelters, which have been great consternation to the community, the absurdity of it. Is that a gift from, are we paying for that? This sort of reads like Greater Wellington is contributing new bus shelters. So is that outside budget, or is those shelters inside our budget?
I think Sean is going to
Yeah,
respond
probably
to
question
this.
for Sean.
Yeah.
So the shelters, no, the Greater Wellington are funding those, and they have a contractor delivering that. But because we were doing the groundworks and the civil works for the rest of the site, they paid us to do the foundation work for the shelters to go in, and then they brought in their own contractor to deliver the actual shelter and the other works associated with upgrading the train station. So, and then we're recovering the cost for the foundations, but nothing else. They're paying for the rest of that cost, totally all Greater Wellington cost.
Okay, oh great. So just so I've got it in my head, that's right. So that's the cost, it's outside the 8.5 or 10.7 million. It's all reimbursed and it's outside that, essentially.
Yes, yes.
Do you have a further question?
No, thank you. So that's good. I can let people know it's not on us. Yeah. So, no, it's not. No, it's Greater Wellington. It's not KCDC. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Ian, great report. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Over to the Mayor.
Yeah, kia ora. I think this report's really easy to navigate and get the information from it. It's way more compact and you can kind of join up the financial information and the activity information much more clearly than in the past. And I think 6 monthly is a good amount of time to be producing this. So congratulations to the team. Also acknowledging Brendan Owens, our new group manager, customer and community. It's the first meeting, and really good to have all this information at this meeting. So yeah, welcome to the organisation. And I just have one question around one measure that wasn't achieved, and that's the average working days to process non-notified resource consents. And that's the average is quite a bit higher than the target. I just want to ask staff, a bit like what Liz's question, what are the actions that we're taking to improve that? And do we feel like it's going to be a material improvement when the annual report comes along, which will only be a few months' time?
Over to James Jefferson.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, the explanation is a whole lot of consents, big consents came off hold last year and blew the timeframes out. The staff have been working on getting through those, clarifying what consents still require further information versus which have not progressed at all, and whether the consent wishes to be withdrawn. I can advise that for the first 3 months of this year, resource consents are being issued in 19 working days, which is under the statutory requirement, but we still have work to do, and the team are dedicated in getting that down. A lot of that has to do with the quality of the applications that come in, and the iterative process under the guise of being more customer focused, actually taking in poor quality applications that then require quite an iterative process, as opposed to going, actually we should be rejecting some that are not of sufficient quality for the team to be able to process them in statutory timeframes. Certainly the first 3 months of this year we're tracking at 19, and I think there's more improvement to come.
So are there businesses or organisations in the community that can help people with those applications that we refer people to?
Look, if I'm being really honest through the chair, I think resource consenting is so complex now that really people
mums and dads, and I think this came through the customer journey maps that we did a few years ago. Mums and dads, it's almost beyond them to do some of the things they want to do, and so therefore they do need to engage consultants. And the consultants, we're lucky. Our local consultants really understand our ground conditions here. I think I have said in this forum before that the easy to develop land has gone in Kapiti. We have lots of constraints in terms of natural hazards. So our local consultants get that, where we get it out of town developers. That's probably where the rubber meets the road, and we get into that process of negotiation around the quality of applications coming in.
Sorry, may I add to that and
Yeah.
just note that as part of our housing strategy, one of the actions that we have in there, in the strategic development team is working actually with the regulatory team to put, I'll say it's perhaps a layman's sort of term or view of what's required through the process for your, as James has called them, mums and dad sort of individuals. So we will be talking to you about that in coming months. We're just starting that piece of work. But James is quite right that that's not going to solve all the problems, but it might help just to clarify for people what is involved and what does it take. So that's something we're doing to try and make it a little bit easier for people to at least understand the challenge, I guess, of what they might be wanting to do and what it might take. So we'll brief you on that and be bringing it through our usual process so that you can see it. But to say at the moment, we don't quite have that kind of material to the level of, I would say, more basic level that we could give people at the moment.
Yeah, that's really good to hear that we've got work going on to address that. It's certainly a high priority for councillors that we improve in that area, as reflected in our new performance measures that the Chief Executive Performance Review Committee is working on. So, yeah, thanks a lot. That's good.
Thanks, Jenna, and also, thanks for acknowledging that Brendan is now in the room and at the table. Nice to have you, and apologies for not mentioning that at the beginning. Great to, for your first meeting in the chambers. Next up, Councillor Halliday.
Hi, just bear with me. I've got a few things that I'd like to touch on, nothing too in depth. First one is page 14 on the report, page 5. Talks to about 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth paragraph down. Talks to an $85 million, it just might be me misreading this, not understanding it, but talks to an $85.1 million operating expense that we spent, and we were forecast to spend 120.9 million. That just sounded like quite a large OPEX cost at 120.9 million for the year. What does that include? Or is that correct? Because that seems to be higher than our, that's page 14. 14 of the agenda, page 9 of the, page 5 of the report. Fifth paragraph down.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair. If I understand the question, we're on page 14 of the agenda, page 5 of the report. The text says that operating expenses for the 9 months was 85.1 million and forecast to be 120.9, 4.2 million above budget for the full year. So I think the question is 120.9 million is a large expenditure, and so is the variance. And
I just wonder if it's full organisational expense or that's just OPEX.
That's the total operating cost for Council Link. So that includes depreciation. It's obviously our net interest expense. It's also our personnel costs. It's our legal costs, and it's also our maintenance costs. So typically in the last quarter of the year, we have quite a big spend on our maintenance and operations. And as the report has said, there's a bit of a timing difference between how we phase the budget during the year. So things have taken a bit longer or haven't started. But certainly, we are, in terms of our total operating cost, we are expecting to be at 120.9 million, and the 4.7 over budget is, as the report says, there's cost pressure on our personnel costs. We've had higher legal costs. And in terms of our revenue, we're also softer on revenue. So we budgeted for higher water rates revenue. People are consuming less water. We can't influence that. And we've also had less consenting revenue than what we anticipated. So we're a little bit softer in revenue, and we're a little bit higher in terms of our costs. And the big one is personnel. We've had to onboard people at slightly higher than what we budgeted because we are competing against the Wellington market.
Yep. So in relation to this picks up depreciation, just clearing a fire in mind. This picks up depreciation, and then above that, to complete our CapEx program, we would be borrowing.
Sorry, Councillor, can you just clarify your question?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just
on the same page.
On the same, it's the same one. So just feeding that through. That's our. I'm just getting it right in my head. So you mentioned depreciation. I just picked that as OPEX. When you say operating expense, OPEX.
Which includes depreciation.
Yeah, but and other parts of the report, I get it now. That's cool. But from our CapEx capital expenditure program, we use the depreciation allowance.
Yes.
Okay, that we
Yes.
don't have to borrow for.
Yes.
So if we've got an $85 million CapEx program this year, there'll be a certain amount of that we borrow.
Yes.
That would be on top of that figure. Is that correct?
No.
Oh.
No. So our operating spend
I
is
don't
our
mean from an
spend.
operating expense perspective. That would just mean we'll be increasing our borrowings.
Correct. So our CapEx spend, so our full budget is $89.5 million. So we're forecasting to spend beneath that. The total spend on CapEx is funded through depreciation. It's funded from development contributions. It's funded from grants and subsidies, and it's funded from borrowing. So borrowings will go up, and that's to drive that capital work program. But the total spend on the capital work program is per the forecast in the report.
Okay, cool. Lovely, thank you. Next question revolves around revocation. I've got a page reference here, but it doesn't really matter. The question is actually driving along that road yesterday, and it's pretty broken up between Waikanai and Paraparaumu, say, for argument's sake. So it needs work, and we've had it revocated back. Who's paying for that work? Because the road's supposed to come out. I'm under the impression that we've received some additional funding from NZTA, is that correct? And that's the funding that will go towards those bits that, should we say, they've been dragging their heels on to get done, and we've just gone, look, we'll do it. Is that my understanding of that?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor. Yeah, there are a number of. That's true for some parts of the highway that need work, but I don't know which particular areas you're referencing in terms of. So there's work. So yes, they're providing us 100% funding to deal with some culverts and some other pieces of work that they didn't get done in time. We're still working through. There's a list of defects that we're still working through with the revocation contractor, because the maintenance period on that extends further out. So they will be picked up by that contractor as well. If anything that isn't in those two categories then would need to be picked up by us as part of our normal work, which is subsidised. 51% of that is subsidised by NZTA. So it really depends on which element of work we're talking about. Happy to talk to you offline if you've got some specific examples, and I can follow those up.
Did we do a list or something on that? I'm picking we did. In fact, I know we did. We've gone through with them and said, look, we're not happy with that, not happy with this, not happy with that, and we've created a funding arrangement to allow for that.
Yes, so we have a defects list. We've got an agreement around funding. We've agreed to disagree on some issues, but we are still working through that defects list.
On page 26 of the agenda, page 17 of the report. Talks to service request. This is the in the comments column on the right hand side, the bottom one. Just glad to get to that. That talks to service requests results. The alignment. There was some issue there with regards to alignment between the measure and contractor contractor responses times is required. I just wanted to get a little bit of expand on that. The team has improved accuracy of reporting this measure, which has identified opportunities for improvement. Alignment between the measures and contractor responses time is required for significant change. Page 26. What did I say? Page 26 of the agenda, page 17 of the report. I just didn't quite follow that, what that meant. Page 26, 17 of the report.
It's service request response regarding footpaths. It's the table, the second to last block in that table. Yes. So one of the issues there had been contractors acknowledging the complaint and attending site as opposed to resolving the complaint as well, and their system not being as active in terms of allowing those changes to be made, or you might get multiple service requests for one fault, and that then throws out the responsiveness in terms of the overall percentage. So we're basically trying to refine that system to allow us to actually reflect what's actually happening, not necessarily what the systems are telling us, which it should be a lot better than that 41%.
Next one. This is page 28 of the agenda. Talks to navigating the ownership of Old Coach Road route continues to be an issue when consenting coastal structures or activities between Raumati and Paraparaumu. These are just like a little bit more of an understanding. So, how is that a problem? Wow, obviously it is a problem. How is that impacting?
In terms of how much time I've got, the Old Coach Route was the historical access road from that ran along the beachfront into Wellington. There is a title for that piece of land. The original owner deceased. The title went into abeyance in terms of anyone actually allocated to it as an owner, but the title still exists in the sense that there's a record there of a piece of land, and it's privately owned basically, but we can't, or LINZ can't actually locate an owner. So, but it still then triggers issues around access onto that land if you are wanting to build things on it. So you've got a titled piece of land, nobody actually prepared to actually accept ownership of it, and then you've got fixed assets that sit on it. These are privately owned, but there's also the Raumati seawall, some parts of that sit on it, that if you want to get a resource consent, or if you want to do something new, you then have to get the owner's permission to do that, but the owner doesn't exist, so you're in this strange sort of cyclic. So it's something that we will bring back to council, and I can give you a bit more detail on it. But over the years, there's been multiple attempts to either vest it as road, or private owners have looked to, for their particular piece of property, have it sort of dissolved in terms of its legal piece of property. The other aspect to it is that some bits of it actually disappear into the ocean in part, so it is not a straightforward issue. Yes.
And it's not something we can take under the Public Works Act or anything like that? I'm sure you've considered that.
That would be one issue, but again, with the liability issues, there's a legal issue around ownership of land. If you allow it to deteriorate or to cause hazards on someone else's land, you then have to start to think about, are you liable for it? So if you don't maintain your land and it falls onto someone who's below it, or it erodes and the property behind it falls into the sea, there's a conversation to be had around who's liable. So it's not. There's some legal precedent stuff that's come through Christchurch, because it came up there quite a bit with the Crown not maintaining some of the areas that have slipped, and people have private land behind it. So hopefully some of that will give us a bit more clarity, and we will need to come back to you on that, because it will be an issue for. We'll need to resolve it before we get in and start replacing large sections of that Ramity seawall. And Public Works Act is one option.
Thank you for that. It's just getting the understandings of the things I didn't pick up on with it, so I appreciate that. On page 31 of the agenda, 22 of the report, this is around stormwater. It's on the right-hand side, second paragraph down. Talks to the rural expectation around water. Community often struggles with how to live with more water. Ratepayers often have unrealistic expectations of our council's ability to fix things. In this situation, additional ratepayers living in rural, non-stormwater rated areas often expect the same or similar level of service as ratepayers, urban street water levies. This needs to be addressed at a council level as it becomes increasingly difficult for staff to manage these expectations. I'm just wondering what those expectations that are being managed are, just for an understanding.
So the properties in the rural zone don't pay stormwater rates. Basically, the stormwater rates that you pay cover the urban area. So, and the only stormwater that's managed in those areas is road runoff, basically. So, but increasingly, parts of the community are wanting similar responsiveness and council to resolve issues of flooding that relate to rural land where we don't actually fund. We don't fund, there's no rates collected for that, so it doesn't fund staff in any sense. But we certainly respond and we talk to those members of the community. And as more and more of that area, there's a combination, I guess, of extending the extent of that stormwater zone from a rating point of view into some of those areas. That's one thing that we could look at. But again, that is a very, it starts to become extremely expensive if you start to try and apply the same sort of standards across those large tracts of land where historically there's been flooding issues that could be a very big number if you were trying to look to resolve all of those. So it's, again, at the moment it comes up regularly. And one of the other issues is people, I don't think, understand the rating. There are a number of submissions into the long-term plan where people were raising concern about what they were paying for around stormwater, water, wastewater, and in a lot of those cases they're not actually, if you don't receive those services, you don't pay rates for them. So so I think it's a combination of that and clarifying what you're actually paying for, but also as we move further into climate change and groundwater and stormwater issues, we may need to do more to elevate that issue around rural communities becoming more potentially isolated if these areas get more inundated.
And I guess we'll be looking at potential bespoke type options in that time space as well. I just wanted to get that clarified because I heard the same thing coming back through the long-term plan process with regards to that. So it's just getting an understanding of that. At the bottom of that page, it talks to thank you for that, Sean. At the bottom of the page, it talks to the draft Waitua implementation plan may significantly impact on the council's ability to maintain and operate its stormwater network. I'll just asking for that, a little bit of expansion on that, but is that just really rules around working in that space?
Yeah, pretty much. It's, I mean, I've talked a number of times about the tension between ecology, flood protection, and maintenance of the stormwater network. And again, with a more of a focus on ecology and water quality, it then becomes more and more difficult to actually undertake sort of basic maintenance in, I think we've got about 40 kilometres of open drain network across the district. So it's a challenge, and the cost of that has increased over the last 5 years. Our open drains maintenance budget now is probably 2 or 3 times what it used to be because we're managing with that. So if that becomes harder, there's a consequential impact there in terms of cost and time to undertake that work too. We're limited in terms of times of the year where we can actually get in and maintain that network because of fish passage and other issues.
Thanks, Sean. Sorry to be hammering you with the questions, but it's just really good from creating that quick picture. Comes back to what's in the report. I find the report excellent with regards to building your understanding of what's going on in the district. So it's getting more and more of an understanding. I guess I'm ferreting out the sort of more obscure things a little bit for clarity. Which brings me on to my next one.
How many questions do you have?
I've got 3 more to go.
Okay, cool.
But if you like, I'm quite happy to just stop for now and go back at the end and let some other people talk.
Sounds good.
You happy with that?
So we'll
Cool.
go to, thanks, Councillor Holiday, that's a good suggestion. We'll go to Councillor Coфord.
Oh, thanks through the chair. Yeah, I just have a general question about the emergency COVID planning applications. I believe there are quite a few that just come in for a 2019 emergency. They're just rolling in now. But my question is, with these applications, they're pretty hefty, and attached to them are a bundle of resource consents. Is the staff really under pressure here? Do we pay extra money for the servicing of them? And are the resource consents compromised in any way with the requirements for environment and etc.?
Yeah, we'll go to James. I
cost-
can see he's got his mic on. Yeah. there you go.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'll have a crack first, and then Chris may want to add something over the top. So look, like all other interested or affected parties, the EPA, the hearing panel, write to council and ask, from a planning perspective, how the application aligns to the district plan, current district plan rules. So we provide a report or analysis. So from a consenting perspective, and we collate reports from other parts of the organisation, traffic management, those sorts of things. In essence, we are processing an application that we don't have a decision over, so we feed that back to the EPA. We've done a couple, and under the previous manager, we tried to recompense all of our cost and got pushed back. There are really tight cost mechanisms that you can get, and we wouldn't have recovered 50% of our actual cost on providing that information back to the EPA. Then the panel make their decision based on everything else from neighbours, those sorts of things. So that's the first cut, and we have a couple still in train, as you well know. The bit that probably keeps me awake at night is when we get into the next tranche of fast track legislation, and what that might look like. And my sincere hope is that they'll be focusing on such big national infrastructure things that we will have time to get ourselves organised. So that's my first cut of that. I think the long answer is we essentially process the consent and then provide the information to the EPA to make the decision.
Say if there was a really important resource consent requirement which required a notified application, the neighbours had to be notified. Would that be shortcut and the neighbours not notified, and it just sort of a ruling by the EPA would bypass all of that?
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily a question that we need
Right.
answered
No, it's just a
right now in
costing
terms of
thing,
its
you know.
relevance to, yeah, we'll take that offline. Thanks, Councillor Coфord.
Right,
Was that
thank
all
you.
of your questions?
No, just another question about the tendering, which is in the report. Excellent report, mind you. You find it very clear. What percentage of council contracts are tendered? Would you say just?
I'd say they all have to go through a procurement process, whether the tender is a selective, open, direct procure. I'd have to go back and have a look and get back to you on that. But all of them go through some form of tender process.
Sounds like something to also take offline as well. Thanks, Councillor Coфord. Kim.
Oh,
over to you.
kia ora. Just a couple of quick ones. So, this report goes out to public, doesn't it? And it's about us telling them what we've been doing and how we've satisfied all the work we've been doing. So when you've got, and I'm looking at page 26, and it's got service requests relating to footpaths responded to within 35 days. So is that a measure of when we responded, or is that a measure of when we fixed the footpath?
So that's the same issue that Councillor Halliday raised in terms of. So some of those we will be able to resolve, but some of them we may not be able to resolve in that time frame. So it's a response, and then it's So primarily it's response, but again, some of them are actually resolved because they're minor. But it may be that we can't, might take us, we're going to renew a whole section of footpath, which we can't resolve in that time frame. So that's why we're looking at getting a bit more, transparency over the measure and what we're reporting on.
So, because if I'm thinking with my mum at home with my hat on and something's pouring out of the road and I call someone, so that in my head the clock doesn't start till you get there, but for us we're saying the clock stops when we get there. And what I mean is the problem is not solved until the water stops. So when you get there, that's the start of my measure from a public perception. So are we going to, and I know we're going to review the measures, are we going to then, and I know that's probably out of our control, but if you're looking at satisfying public to say, this is what we're doing for you, and your clock stops when theirs starts, that's not a very good measure, because to me I'm saying, well, actually, you took 3 months to fix that, from my perspective. Same with the resource consents. Are we going to bring in measures like, I know you've got the stop-start and the resource consent stuff, but from a person who's put a resource consent in, my clock starts once I file the application. And even though it's a stop-start, and it's 20 working days, that 20 working days could span over 12 months. So for me, that's the important measure. And I imagine for the public, that's the important measure, as opposed to when you turned up. So are we going to be looking at actually those real relevant measures as opposed to just this?
I think Chris has a response to this. Yeah, and
I was just going to share about our performance framework and then let Sean answer the question about level of service. This is a measure set by Internal Affairs, which all local authorities have been asked to report on, so that it's done in a consistent way. Some of us may have commented about the quality of the measure, but it's historically been set and it is what it is. So currently we're required to report that. And it's one of the mandatory measures that is sitting in our suite of performance measures. Unfortunately, because it's mandatory, we will continue to report that. And we are behind the scenes looking at other measurements around what we do, but we're following that guideline at the moment. And unfortunately, that is what we're reporting around our level of service. In a similar way, actually, that we do for resource consents, as an example, there's been some standards set in the way that we count and measure things so it's consistent. So it's about level of service. I think more about what we do. I know there's an element of this of satisfaction or impact, and we're bringing in a new suite of measures to look at that element of performance. And I might hand over to Sean because he might have further insights into level of service.
Yes, thank you. So I guess the issue is really of the thousands of service requests that we receive, I can't tell you that we would resolve those within 3 to 5 hours, or it would be, unless you want to significantly increase the number of staff we have, or the amount of money that we spend on that. So it's the nature of the fault or the issue that's been raised that really dictates the resolution. So having someone respond on site and actually assess it, make a decision as to whether or not it's of a high risk or we can resolve it. Really, that is, I guess, to some extent, the critical component to get someone there, have a look at it, assess it, and then make a decision about what they're going to do about it. But the nature of those faults could be range across all of the areas that we work in: stormwater, roading, water, wastewater. It would be impossible to try and have a measure in a sense of resolution that would be affordable, where you could say, 80% or 30%. I couldn't even tell you whether we could achieve 60% in terms of resolution because of the scale of the network. And you'll always have something that potentially happens that we can't resolve because of that issue. So, yes, the community want to see that resolved, and that's important to them. So at the moment, we balance that between the extent of the network we manage, the cost to do that, and making decisions on site around how critical they are in terms of risk, and then, putting resources in to get them resolved. And as Chris has said, there's more work being done on looking at an outcome type focus for the community and for the district that might give a better measure of that in its entirety. But that's the nature of infrastructure, that you can't fix everything on the timetable that maybe everybody would like.
I think Darren just wanted to respond as well, and then.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair. I really just wanted to, I think, just reflect on what both Chris and Sean have said, and just reiterate, a lot of the measures are DIA imposed measures that we are required to capture in the report. And whilst I understand that the start process for each individual is different, when you work nationally, regionally and locally, you have to have some measures that are consistent across the country. So for argument's sake, if we sat here and set a measure as to how we measure I guess what we do in our resource consenting space as an example, and you said that it was 120 days, and then you go down the road and it's 90 days, there's a lot of inconsistency, right? So legislatively, it's 20 working days, and there's a framework around that 20 working days, which allows for national consistency. We may not agree with that, but that is the framework, and that's what we work to. And so if I then come back to response times to dealing with infrastructure issues, for argument's sake, potholes, water leaks, and the like, again, it's about having a framework. So for us, it's about the first triage point, right? Which is receipt of the call and then getting someone out to assess what is required. Because Sean's right. It could be as simple as a crack in a plastic pipe, which is relatively easy to fix, or it might be something more major that requires heavier work to deal with that. And we don't have that on hand. And there's probably only 2 or 3 councils actually in the country, I'd suggest, would have that on hand. And you look at their staffing numbers, like Wellington City with 2,000, Christchurch with 3,000, and Auckland City with 6,700 people. And they still use contractors to deal with the work. So the key piece for us is acknowledging the complaint, receipt of the complaint, and then setting about as quickly as we can how we resolve the complaint, which won't always meet the needs, I would suggest, of our customers. But I hold to the mantra that we do the best that we can every day when we come to work, and that's all I can ask of our staff. And as long as we continue to do that, I'm comfortable with that. Because we have to have a start point somewhere. So I guess I just wanted to reiterate what the team is saying.
Do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, and it's not so much that maybe that kind of measure isn't appropriate in this report, but internally, are we looking at that from that perspective? And from those answers, I gather that that's what's happening. Because I'm just mindful that this is a report that we put to public, understanding the limitations, but if we're asking public to read it and go, yep, that fits with my picture, understanding that it's not going to, because they come from different perspectives. That's all.
That's a really valid question, and also looking at it through the eyes of the public as well, and how they might read it is really useful to do. So thank you for posing that. Councillor Halliday, you just got your 3 questions, and then we'll look for someone to move the report.
Yep, sure. Through water management, let's talk to resource consenting with Greater Wellington being I'm sure you say a risk as such. I guess my question is, and I'm hearing this, starting to hear this more, especially in that wetland space, and just bearing in mind the legal action that's going against Greater Wellington in that space there as well. But are they, I guess, and this is how long's a piece of string really, isn't it? Are they being unreasonable? They might not believe that they are. But if this is if this is becoming more and more challenging in the space, are they becoming more demanding in this space, shall we say, and what we would perhaps call an unreasonable way? As such, is that something that can be answered at all, or would that?
I could maybe catch up offline and answer but the natural resources plan which Greater Wellington use as their planning, as a district plan associated with their work, if you like, does have a focus on quality and environment over and above necessarily physical works, flood protection type activities in those open waterways, yes. So by default, that just means it is harder to get consent to carry out those activities. But I'd say it's more a function of the regulatory environment than any particular issue with Greater Wellington as such.
Very tactfully put. Yeah, because that's what I'm starting to talk to developers, and it's just I appreciate the importance of the environment, but they're just trying to find that balance there as well. This is just a quick one. I noticed in the community support there was a Kaumātua housing program, which sort of took me by surprise because apparently we're in partnership with the seniors office. I know nothing about it. I was just curious to know where that's sitting at the moment as such. Sorry,
Page number,
if you like, it's page 59. No, sorry, page 50. I think, sorry. That's a Te Ora Kaumātua program.
Sorry, we're just trying. I think Maura has an answer that she can provide, or would like to make some comments, or pass to her.
Yeah, so that's the Kaumātua Morning Tea. That's run through the Connected Communities team. It was funded in partnership with the Office of the Seniors. No, the Toyota one was, yeah, the morning tea.
Right, one more. You got one more question?
Two more.
All right. We'll keep them nice and brief.
Yep. The next one is around Lagoime requests. I noticed there's 230 Lagoime requests. I'm just wondering, do we track the cost of the organisation for Lagoime requests as such?
So through you, Madam Chair, no, we don't track the cost of Lagoime requests. Where we feel that a request is extensive, we can actually ask the requester to refine their request. If we feel, I think we give 1 or 2 hours of staff time to respond. If we feel that it's going to go over that, under legislation, we can actually advise the requester that there will be a certain amount of time and we're actually allowed to apply a charge. We can't just apply a charge, provide the information and say there's $1,000, thank you. We have to go back and actually advise. But we don't, it's kind of a, it's not an additional, it's within our personnel costs. We have a team that look after requests, but it does involve, on top of everyone's day jobs, it does involve activity managers, it does involve the senior leadership team. So this just has to be done on top of BAU.
Yeah. And I'll just give, numbers-wise, do we track sort of annually, will that come in the annual report, that, you know, comparison to previous years, how many we've had come through or something?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we do track them. We do report quarterly to the Risk and Assurance Committee. That's part of our legislative compliance report that we do. I need to get back to you as to whether we actually publish the full number in the annual report, but we do report quarterly to the Risk and Assurance Committee.
That's cool.
It's mainly a monitoring function. We normally, we obviously can't predict how many requests we're going to get, but we do report the trends.
Trends is what I'm more interested in.
Yeah.
And everything, just depending on what's going on in the wider community, potentially.
Yeah.
And last but not least, a lot of our forecasts seem to be delivering above allowed budgets in the forecast at the end of the year, and I appreciate that'll wash out potentially at the end of the annual report. But is that a general reflection of just the general market at the moment? With that, sorry to lead an answer into a question, but But is that part of the reasoning behind why that's happening?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so look, the forecasting function is asking our subject matter experts to forecast the likely spend of activities. Obviously, we don't like to forecast over budget because we don't have approval to overspend the budget. But we have in our capital works program, we have a number of projects, and what we've discussed earlier is actual costs are coming in way over cost estimates. So through our activity managers and the senior leadership team, we have to reprioritise budgets. Some projects are already in train, some maintenance needs to be done, upgrades need to be done. And so we, the senior leadership team looks at monthly financial reports, and we do have to reprioritise. But where we have instances of softer revenue, that has an immediate impact. So we still have to get the work done, and we are seeing across the board, we're just seeing across all our activities, maintenance and capital, that things are just costing more. And so we prioritise the budgets as much as we can, but we are flagging that there will be anticipated cost overruns.
And would it be a fair comment to say that the leeway that you asked for with regards to spreading over the 3 years of the long-term plan will help manage that process?
Oh, look, absolutely. I think you're referring to our next LTP, the leeway.
In general, I can't remember, a little while ago we talked about,
Yep.
You know, we try to keep within that 12-month budget, but it would be more having that flexibility to work within the 3 years, if you like, allows us to balance and juggle things as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that'll enable us to really drive our capital works program, make sure that we can put the budget against the projects, but there'll still have to be a reprioritisation. $99 million was taken out of the first 3 years of the capital works program. So being able to shift budgets around from one project to the other so that we can actually finish projects and managing it on a 3-year basis. We still, just for clarification, we will still be bringing reports back to council advising of budgets that need to be transferred, what the implications are, and council will need to vote on that. So we will still be seeking council resolutions, but the ability to manage within our overall budgets, but shift budgets between projects so that we can actually get projects done is a huge step forward.
And I just think that's good business personally, and so I think it's great. Thank you, that's me.
Sean, did you want to make a comment? Okay. Deputy Mayor Kirby.
I'd like to move the recommendations on page 6 of the agenda.
Great. Okay, can we have a seconder? Councillor Coe, would you like a right of introduction?
No, I'll waive that.
Awesome. Is there any debate? I was going to say, I feel like probably as we quite often do, we've injected some commentary into our questions, so we'll seek to limit debate. But Mayor, over to you, the Mayor Holb.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight one area in the report that I think is going particularly well, and that's our water space. 3 major wastewater projects, or 4, that are going really well. The water treatment plant in Waikanae. Also really was happy to see the if the work had to be delayed a little bit, that we're building up supplies to do the work in the future, and procuring equipment so that we can get that at the best price, because we all know that it keeps going up, the costs keep going up. So congratulations to the infrastructure team.
Kia ora, thanks, Janet. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, a couple of things. Just wanted to note, by the way, speaking of that, Kapiti Coast District Council is one of 4 finalists in the National Water Taste Test Competition. The winner to be announced tonight in New Plymouth, so well done us. That's at Rangiuru Otaki is where that water came from. So well done. I wouldn't want people to think I was being negative about the report. I was just asking questions about the cost and relevance of it. But the I did have it's a question, so, and I tend to get these things around the other way. I noticed under the total assets is 2.26 billion, 2.13 billion of which is property, plant and equipment. Now I'm assuming the interesting decision that was made by a previous council to value the land underneath roads as assets of council. So is that still the case? So those are, we,
Through you, Madam Chair, absolutely correct.
Yeah.
So part of our assets include land under roads. So the council has a policy to include land under roads as an asset, and it's part of the revaluations that we do. So it's part of those assets, absolutely. I think it's in the order of about $880 million now.
yeah. And just in relation to that, I've actually heard feedback from people who go, look, council's got heaps. They've got, billions in assets. Why don't they just flog off some of their assets? And without knowing that actually a lot of them are under the ground. And so I just wonder if there's, if we can actually single that out as an explanatory point for people. It was very controversial at the time that it was introduced here. I remember that. So yeah, just in terms of giving people context about what we actually do have, and it's like this $97 million gift from NZTA. That's not a gift. It's a poison chalice, actually, is what it is. But anyway, yeah.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillor. So in terms of the annual report, we insert a section called a financial overview. We know that the financial statements part of the annual report is the less enticing part to a reader, and so we do try and do quite a nice, fun, simplified overview of our financials and what are our assets and stuff. So we can certainly. We don't go to the pains of explaining land under roads, but we certainly could. We're always looking for areas to improve our annual report, so we could look at doing that. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really, really good point. Councillor Halliday,
I just want to, since we're bragging, I just want to note that the waste minimalisation team are also up for an award as well. But I can't access my email at the moment, so I can't tell you exactly what it is as such. But yeah, great to see that they've been nominated for in the infrastructure awards as well. So yeah, great stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of good mahi happening all around. Okay, Deputy Mayor Kirby.
Yeah.
Yeah,
While we're
Mayor,
at
and then we'll go round
it,
the
Te Horo Kilns and Toi Mahara both up for major
Okay,
awards as well.
woohoo. Yeah, one big clap for all of them. Okay. Deputy Mayor Kirby, right of the fly.
Great. I just want to say thank you to staff for the report. I know there's a lot of work goes into it, and I actually value the interim report at 6 months, or even looking at the 4 months, so that we get it out of that window of December, which is an awkward time to be looking at reporting. So thank you for the report and for the comprehensive questions from the team. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and total for that, and also a welcome inclusion for the top 10 priorities as well being woven through. So I just want to acknowledge that, because I feel like that work that we've done as a table to set the strategic direction has really filtered through all of the mahi that's happening. So just acknowledging both of you for taking that on in the wider team. And there's been a lot of praises sung as well about the various awards and ways that we've been improving as an organisation. So acknowledging everyone who's been a part of making that happen as well. All right, all those in favour? Aye. Against? That is carried. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Cheryl. And I think you also heard from the table that we do really value having these performance reports come to us. So thank you for getting it to the table amidst all of the other pressures on your time. Okay, we'll take a brief break. Yeah, we'll come back at 11, and we'll try and get through these next two reports by 12 and finish the meeting by 12. That's the goal. All right, see you in 7 minutes.